Hi, I'm Coach Todd, head coach of NoLimitsTriathlon.com. In this video, I'm going to give you 10 tips for your next running event. I've done quite a few running events over the past 20 years. And just over the last 4 weeks, I've completed in 3 events. One was a half Ironman, one was a 5K, then one was a 10K that I just completed over the weekend. And so I want to come up with 10 tips that will make your next running event that much better. The first thing I want you to do is have a look at your fitness and come up with a race goal. The first one's quite important, is the fitness. And all you have to do is look at the training that you've been doing over the last month or so. Go back to your training log and see, well, did you get in all your runs that you're supposed to, or did you miss a bunch? So it just tells you, what kind of shape you are going into the race. Then once you figure that out, then go down to the bottom one, which is goal. So what is your overall goal for the race? Is your goal just to finish? To run from the start to the end without stopping? Or do you want to run a certain pace? Do you want to run a certain heart rate? Do you want to finish in a certain spot? Top 5, top 10, top 100? Where do you want to go? So come up with a goal. Number 2, once you know your goal, you need to come up with a pace. Most of us now, when we're training, we are either using our smartphones or we're using our GPS watches. And the technology that we have is, to me, I think is just fantastic. We can look down and we can know right away what pace we're running at. So if you go back to number 1, look at your fitness. What kind of pacing have you been doing throughout your training runs? And then use that as an example or as a way to figure out what pace you want to hold for your upcoming race. And then write it down. So if your goal is to break 60 minutes for a 10K, well, what pace do you need to hold? If you want to break 50 or 45 or 40, figure out what the pace is so that when you're out there running and you look down at your watch, you'll know if you're on pace or not. Now, if you don't have a watch or you don't want to use your phone to determine your pace, you could also come up with a time as well, so that when you're coming to the certain kilometer markings or mile markings, you'll know if you are on target. So if you want to run, for example, if you want to run a 40-minute 10K, I chose that because the math is very easy. You want to hold 4 minutes per kilometer. So for each kilometer, you need to be increments of 4. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. The math is very easy. And the same thing if you're doing, 50 minutes, it's by 5. So when you come to the third kilometer, you should be at 5 times 3 is 15 minutes. And so try to figure out, come up with an easy way to determine if you're on pace or not. Number 3, arrive early to the race. Let's get this one off. Arriving early at the race, I think, is very important. It reduces the stress level. It gives you a chance to get a good parking spot, which is good so that you don't have to walk too far to the race start. And also at the end of the race, you can go to your car. You don't have to walk a mile to get to the car. Although if you want to get a good warm-up in, then maybe you want to arrive late so that you have to be far away, so you have to run a long way to get to the start. I mean, that's something you could do. I also like arriving early because it's less stressful and it gives you the opportunity to go to the bathroom so that the lineups are a lot less. Coming to the race that's, almost late it can be very stressful. I've done it many times. And then trying to get in line for the bathroom can be just a nightmare. You're watching your time tick down. You go, oh, I've got 5 minutes before the race goes, and I'm hoping that I get to the bathroom is probably not the best place to be. So give yourself time to get to the race early. Try to get there maybe an hour or 45 minutes early. If it's a really big race, you may want to get there 2 hours early just so you can get all your stuff done. It'll also allow you to get in a proper warm-up. And that leads us to tip number 4, which is the warm-up. I'm a big believer in warm-up, and I'm sure you guys are too. Just like when all your training runs or rides or swimming, you are warming up, right? So basically what you're doing for a warm-up is you're starting off slow and gradually building up your pace. So you do the same sort of idea that when you're doing a running event. For a warm-up, I suggest doing at least 5 minutes if you can, but if you can do 10 or 15 minutes, that's going to be even better. What the warm-up does is just wakes up your body. Most of the running events we do are in the morning. So it gives us a chance to wake up our bodies, get our muscles moving, and get rid of those aches and pains. Like the race I did on Sunday, even though I got there early, the lineups for the bathroom were long, and I ended up, everything just seemed like it just flying by. So I only had about 6 minutes to warm up. So when I started running, my body's like, oh, Todd, this does not feel good at all. My legs were sore. Everything it wasn't happening so good. I'm like, it's okay. Just keep going. And I just kept, running along at a slow pace. And eventually everything loosened up. And then what I want you guys to do during the warm up is add some short bursts to race pace, your anticipated race pace. Now, don't look at your watch. Don't go by GPS or anything. Just go by feel. So pick it up to your race pace and then bring it back down. You can hold it for like 20 or 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be long. It's just telling your body, this is what I'm going to ask for you in about 3 or 4 minutes. So let's just get a little bit of warm up. Let's get a little bit of anticipation of what's to come, and then we're going to start. So try to do a good warm up. Number 5 is the start. Most running events these days are by chip. So they're going to give you a chip to put on your shoe, or it's going to be on the number itself, which means that it doesn't really matter too much where you put yourself in the race. So you could be in the front, you can be in the middle or the back. It doesn't really matter too much based on time, because once you cross that timing mat, that's when your actual time starts. And when you cross the finishing mat, that's when your time stops. So in that respect, it doesn't really matter where you put yourself. But if you are a fast runner and you don't want to get slowed down by slower runners, then put yourself in the front. And vice versa. If you are a slow runner and you don't want to get run over by the faster runners, then put yourself closer to the back or on the outsides, like on the right side or the left side. For my 10K on Sunday, what I did, I know they'll probably come in the top 20 out of the race. And they had about 600 people in the race. So I put myself closer to the front. There was a lady right in front of me, and I thought, well, maybe you're going to be faster than me. I'm like, oh, it's okay. You're right at the front. So I put myself kind of behind and just a little bit to the left, so that when the gun went off, within 3 strides, I know that I'm going to be passing her. So I had to just, gently go to the side to pass her. But she's going to get passed by a lot of people. So I would think if you're a slower runner, just go back a few so that you're not going to get run over by the fast people. Some fast people just go right through, and sometimes it's not so pretty. So please seat yourself accordingly. And if you are worried about the crowds, go to the back of the bus, right? And then just slowly walk to the start. And once you cross that starting mat, then pick up your pace and away you go. I will also find that the start is always going to be faster than your average pace for the whole race. It's just electrifying. It's an exciting moment where everyone is excited to start the race, and the pace is always fast. It's just always fast. So for example, if your goal is to run 4-minute kilometers, there's a good chance that for the first half a kilometer, you could be running 3:20s. And that's fast. But you got to be very careful not to go out too fast. So what I do when I'm running along, I'll try and stay with the crowd for a little bit. And then after probably about 30 seconds, I look down and check my pace. Because if I'm trying to hold 4-minute kilometers, and if I look down, I'm holding 3:15s, well, there's no way I can hold that pace. 3:15s is way too fast. I have to slow down, so get closer to 3:50, 3:55, so I don't blow up. Do you know what I mean? Have you done that in a race before, where you start too fast and after a kilometer you go, I can't hold this pace, and then it's like it gets so painful. Your body is screaming at you, and the rest of the race is not pleasant at all. So really be careful about the start. You will be faster than normal for sure, but don't go out too fast. When you come to your first kilometer, it's going to be faster than your average pace, maybe by 10 or 20 seconds. And then you're going to find you're gradually going to get your breathing under control and then get into your race pace. And that's going to take you probably till the 2nd kilometer. Which brings us up to here, the 2nd kilometer. I think the second kilometer is quite important. The first kilometer is always going to be fast. It's always going to be fast. The second kilometer is going to be very close to your race pace, so that when you get there, don't look at your time split, but look more so at your pace. So for example, you're trying to hold 5-minute kilometers, and you look down at your pace at the 2 kilometer mark, you should be right around, I would say maybe 4:50, 4:55, or 5 minutes, right around there. If you're trying to target going under 50 minutes for a 10K. But you don't want to be running fours. If you're running fours and you're trying to do fives, that's way too fast. So you want to be getting really close to your race pace at the second kilometer. Let's move on now to number 7, which is pacing strategy. And there are a couple I'm going to go over. What I like to do is basically an even split, except for the first kilometer. Remember, the first kilometer is always going to be fast, but then from kilometer, say if we're doing a 10K, from kilometer 2 to kilometer 10, it's going to be pretty much steady, right? So that's an even pace. You're trying to run the same pace from the beginning to the end. You can also do something called a negative split. A negative split means the first half is slower than the second half. So you intentionally hold back for the first 5K and then increase it for the second half of the race. And that's a good strategy too. A positive split is the opposite of that. That means your first half is faster than the second half. So you slow down during the second half. And a lot of racers run into that, not intentionally, but it just happens because they go out too fast. So make sure you choose your pacing strategy accordingly. Now, if you're doing a lot of running events, then you can play around with some. You might say, okay, on this race, I want to try to do a negative split. This one, let's do a positive split. This one, even split. And find out which one works best for you. Let's move on to tip number 8. And that's basically monitoring your effort. How are you going to monitor your effort? You could use a GPS watch. It'll tell you your pace. You could use a heart rate monitor so you can see how fast your heart is beating. You can go by perceived effort. And that's basically asking yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I feel? 10 being pushing your hardest, 1, you're barely moving, so somewhere in a range there. What I like to do, especially on longer, harder races, I will use a combination of all 3. So I'll look at my pace, I'll look at my heart rate, and I'll also use perceived effort. You can always look at all 3 of those numbers and then come up with a decision whether you need to go faster or slower. We're now on to the next tip, number 9. The finish. How do you finish your race? Do you slow down? Do you speed up? Do you put your arms up? Do you hit the stop button on your watch with your head down? Or do you look for the cameras and have some nice pictures? However you finish is really up to you. I like to, it changes. You know what? It depends on the race. Sometimes you're just happy to get across the finish line. And sometimes you might be looking at the time. You might pick it up. Or you might slow down. You might go, you know what? I'm happy with the result. I'm just going to cruise it on through. I always try to have a good finisher photo, arms up, and I thank the volunteers right away, and I also thank the competitors around me, people that push me to get across that finish line, people in front of me and people behind me. So congratulate the people around you. The last tip I'm going to give you for number 10 is how are you doing? This is a tip you can use in any race, and I think this is a great tip. So whether you're at the 2 kilometer mark, the 4, the 6, the 8, take a time out of the race. You're still moving, but ask yourself, how am I doing? Are you doing the best you can at this moment? And if you are not doing the best you can, then go faster. But if you're doing the best you can, just continue on and keep going. And by asking that question, when you cross the finish line, you will say, you know what, I did the best I could, and you have to be happy with what you did. Otherwise, a lot of people finish the race and go, and I myself included, I'd cross the finish line and go, you know what, I probably should have gone faster. And I thought, I came to a realization about this a few years ago. I go, that's crazy thinking, Todd, because you probably gave everything you got out there. And if you do that, give everything you've got, once you finish the race, that's it. You couldn't have done any better. Because if you could have, you would have. So always ask yourself, how are you feeling? And if you're going too slow, go faster. If you're going too fast, go slow. If you're going just right, carry on. So those are 10 tips you can use for your next running event. And I hope they help you. Maybe you use all 10, maybe you use 1 or 2. But I think if you take a couple of them, you will see a better result. This is Coach Todd saying thank you very much and happy training.